Hi again. Welcome to the Norwegian Film School and yet another artistic research cafe, where we aim to tell you about what we're doing at the film school and also to hopefully inspire and inspire for creation, basically, because that's what we love to do. So this time we're going to both introduce the VR lab off-pists that we arranged had at Hafjell in October, and also use this opportunity to discuss co-creation, which is an important term when it comes to interactive productions. So I'll start off by saying a bit about the background for the VR lab. Well, I'll start off by introducing me. I'm both an artistic research fellow here and a creative producer at Technopilot, working with interactive productions, and I'm a futurist, so I love talking about this stuff. And that's the fire alarm? No, it's not the fire alarm. Fantastic. Ignoring, that's what I do best. Yes. I need to give send a little greeting to Christian Mosvold as well for this project, because he's the producer behind the VR experience, The Sun, the picture by Edvard Munch. And me and Christian, we've been discussing how to build the interactive industry in Norway for several years, and also about having a VR lab, having a space where we could meet and start to work together. So, yes. Oh, I can't see anything. Oh well, maybe. Behind the speaker as well. Okay, sorry. Christian has been an important guy also for this initiative, and then starting at the film school and with Fredrik Graver and the others, being able to fund this and do it already this year has been amazing, because this is for me the important question: how can we build a strong environment for interactive storytelling in Norway? We know that people are working on interactive projects, but we don't feel that we don't know each other. We don't know us as a group. We also frequently hear from people who would love to explore this area, but who don't know how to begin, because they might be excellent storytellers in other fields, but just sort of how to step into this new world. And it's about how to get started. So we know, what do we need? We need to get to know great people that we can create high quality content with, and to learn the culture of how to work together, because it's different. I mean, people from games know how games are made, or from films. It's a very different structure. So we need to meet in the middle and get to learn each other. And then we also need to get strong interactive projects that can get funding, because that's a big inspiration to us all. It's also something that will make the funders more positive towards interactive storytelling when they see that there are high-quality projects coming from Norway. So these were some of our aims. And then in order to do this, we need to play. We need to come together and be creative. Because in this field, you cannot and will not do everything yourself. That's a given. You need all the other fields to bring their creativity to the project so that you can do something as a whole. And we need to develop a common language and understand the different skill sets and what they contribute to our project. So this was the background for then starting with a creative lab where we could do just these things. So our goals for Off-Piste: to be the very best place to develop these skills, to be the event that helps build a strong industry for interactive storytelling, so that we can use each other in the future, creating interesting, high-quality projects. And it's really great to have a lot of the participants here in the room with us, who can tell us whether it worked or not. Because we were stuck in a hotel in Hafjell for 8 days. Yes, we got to know each other. And this is from the beginning of the lab. And it was, I can just personally say, it was such a great experience to see all this creativity come together. And people, after an ideation process, suggesting projects, and then gathering around the projects that we will learn more about later today. And this is where I end my introduction. We'll have Tom from Crossover Labs, who were arranging the lab, tell us about this, how they work. We will also have presentations of the 6 prototypes. In the breaks, we hope that people will use the opportunity to test the prototypes. We have 3 VR setups here, I think, 3. So please do. That's a priority for us to let people test. At the end, it says a panel debate in the program. I thought we'd gather some of the participants here so that you can all get to ask them what this was like working with other creatives in a new format. So hopefully you'll use that opportunity. And then we'll try to use as much as we can from of the time we have so that people can get to test prototypes and talk and discuss. Yes. So with that, I'll give the word to Tom Hill so that you can tell us what you put us through up in the mountains. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Millen from Crossover Labs in the UK. We run labs, we curate immersive and interactive exhibitions for festivals and other events, and we also are a production company in our own right. So just starting off... oh, that's good. Let's try again. Hey, look at it, it's beautiful. Beautiful logo. There we go. Labs, curation, productions. Those are the 3 things that we do. Okay, so to start off talking a little bit about traditional productions, because the only thing we do isn't just kind of VR and interactive. We also make films that screen in cinemas. So we've done a series of these films here, 10 now, that use archive footage, so usually from the BFI archive, pairing that archive with a documentary filmmaker, and then musicians or kind of well-known bands who create a live score for the film. It means that they always go broadcast, and they do film festivals and theatrical release, but it means they can also be screened, as you can see here, like at music festivals. That was at Latitude in 2012, I think, From the Sea to Land Beyond. So a couple of examples. So we did a film about the atom with Mark Cousins, the documentary filmmaker, and the band Mogwai, who are like a Glaswegian prog rock band. That went on a world tour. They created a completely original score for this film, and it even toured to Hiroshima, which was pretty amazing. And then our most recent film, Arcadia, which is a film about folk customs and the countryside in Britain, but it's really about Brexit. We think it's the first folk horror documentary. I've got a little trailer here so you can get an idea of what these films look like.
This is the Britain we have all inherited. A land of incomparable beauty.
1,000 years, these valleys have had a secret which no one else has shared.
Next, come on. Come on. Why is he going out of school? Shit. Okay. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, so we also produce virtual reality projects. So we produced the BBC's first virtual reality commission, which was Easter Rising, Voice of a Rebel. It's a virtual reality piece that uses archive audio that was recorded in the 80s by a guy called Willie McNeve just before he died. And he had taken part in the Easter Rising, which is seen as the birth of the modern Irish Republican movement in the UK. He recorded his experiences of the day, and we took from that audio and recreated the moments that he took part in on the momentous, like, kind of 2 days in Dublin in 1916. Here we go.
Much has been spoken and written over the years about the rising of 1916. I myself had a small adventure, which I think I should relate.
So we're really interested in cross-disciplinary collaborations at Crossover. And with this virtual reality piece, we wanted to take a little bit of what we had learned from the experiences of producing the archive music films and try and put them into virtual reality. The way we did that was firstly working with some archive, and every scene in the experience is heavily researched by using the BBC's own historical archive and their newspaper archives. But we also got a band involved called the High Llamas. The idea being, when you bring a band in who's already got a following themselves, you can bring a whole new audience to a topic or a medium that those people might not ordinarily engage with. It doesn't like videos. One more. So another production that we produced was the prototype for an interactive film called Riot. So what Riot did was, it's a branching narrative where you find yourself on the fringes of a dangerous riot, and you have to try and get home safely. And the way that you do that is it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence and a webcam to monitor your facial expressions and read your emotions. And depending on how you react emotionally to the situations you're confronted with, depends on where you go through the branching narrative. So Karen Palmer was the director here, and she talks about it a lot more eloquently than I can. Oh, damn it. It doesn't like these. Huh, I'm going to go to the YouTube site. It's probably going to work better. No. What? Hey.
We're living in the information age, and that's causing information overload. The times we're living, where there's lots of social conflict and different opinions, that's not necessarily helping us reach a greater sense of understanding. If we want to change, if we want to make a difference, we need to shift people's perspective. We need a new type of storytelling. The objective is storytelling that puts the participant at the center of the emotional experience. That's why I created Riot.
Back up! Back up! Leave immediately! I'm dead! Leave! Immediately!
I was watching Ferguson on social media, and I was really upset with what I was seeing. Another young black man in America murdered by the police. Only when there was some rioting did it become news. How they're being represented in the media is not empathetic. Thinking, you know, there's more to this story, and there's more to how this is being represented. And I felt that if I could put people in the middle of a riot by interacting with characters, from police to anarchists to protesters to looters, we can have a sense of understanding of the situation.
Why you arrested her? Why you arrested her?
Step back!
Riot is an emotionally responsive film. It uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, live action, and facial recognition, and the objective is to get out the riot alive.
Back away! I will arrest you next! Yo, I've been looking all over for you, man. Let's get out of here. It's not your fight. Come.
Riot uses neurogaming. That creates new neuron pathways, whereas people's brains cannot tell the difference between what has really happened and immersive, interactive experience where you're in the middle of it.
This is gonna be for you, for Monday, for everyone. Let's go, man!
So I fuse technology and storytelling because in the times that we're living, I feel that viewers don't want to be just observers. So if you don't use technology, you are not allowing yourself to access a lot of young people in a language which they are excited about. Riot monitors 3 emotions: calm, anger, and fear. The webcam will be watching you as you are watching the film and determine the average of your emotions. Your eye tracking will determine your attention and your interest, and in that way, the narrative will respond and follow a character that you're interested in. So you are watching, in essence, a bespoke film that reflects your reality. There's a famous quote that says, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." I'm very much inspired and influenced by parkour and my experience of moving through fear, personally. Moving through fear is a very active emotion. Like, yeah, I have no fear, I understand where I'm coming from, I know who you are, I know who I am. Then what we're gonna do, and how can we work together or not work together? Parkour affords you the skill set to be able to navigate through risk. It's moving from that position of not being fearful, which is what I am integrating into my work. So when I came with this idea, I felt it was quite controversial. I didn't realize, though, how much the world was going to change. Trump coming into America, Brexit, how this division was really opening up lots of conflicts. But now the climate's changed. People are starting to wake up in a sense and say, what tools have we have? We've got music, we've got film, we've got stories. So the final Riot iteration is going to be a 360 environment where you can be playing the experience with several people. It's epic, it's cinematic, it's scaled, where you're using technology to help you reach your full potential as a human being, but through entertainment. If you want to change the world, you have to start by changing yourself and taking control of your own life before you're looking at other people. Once you've got a sense of understanding of who you are, then you can engage in a dialogue. This intention that I have is that Riot will herald in a conscious form of filmmaking, create insight, understanding, shift people's perspective. And I think that's where you can make a difference.
Okay. Yes, so that's Riot. It's still in production for the final version, but the prototype has toured internationally now. It's been to the Phi Center in Montreal and Future of Storytelling in New York. And yeah, finally, and one more production that we're currently developing is Parwaz. It's a story about a young Afghan boy who traveled here to the UK in 2015 with his elder brother Jarwood. On their way into the UK, they were smuggled in a refrigerated lorry with 14 other refugees that they started to lose oxygen. And Ahmed saved the lives of everybody else in that lorry by texting an aid worker that he had met in the jungle during his time in the jungle. So this project is going to recreate his journey by using his drawings and putting them into a virtual reality environment. And he is our lead storyteller. We're bringing on artists and writers to collaborate with him. So it's kind of like a long co-creation process. I've got a very short little promo of this. It's kind of like a mood board.
There is fighting in Afghanistan and there's not good place to live. I could not go to school. It was too dangerous for me. We managed to escape. I was frightened. I never went to school again. We traveled to the mountains. We had no food. We had 2 eggs and no water.
So Ahmed wants to become a pilot when he grows up. So the idea is it's part co-creation project. It's also part art therapy. We're taking him back along his journey, but he's flying through a borderless sky is the idea. Then curation. So most of what we do actually is curation. I started off at Sheffield Doc Fest a few years ago now. And then we moved on from there, and now we curate for several festivals throughout the year, including Bergen Film Festival, CPH Docs, Silver Salts, World Congress Science Factual Producers, and we're just launching a new festival of our own in Adelaide that's taking place in February, which is all about the business of immersive storytelling during the Adelaide Fringe. So when we first started programming VR at Sheffield Doc Fest in 2014, we just had a couple of creators come apply online, submit their creations, and they said, it's virtual reality, we'll bring all the kit. And we were like, yeah, sure, whatever. We're not quite sure what that is, but fine, because at the time we were doing web docs and kind of interactive filmmaking style experiences. And the two artists that applied were Oscar Raby and Noni de la Peña. And this was we had Noni's piece, Project Syria, there, and this was the headset that they were using at the time, which I love, because it was as far as I think it was like the first spatial tracking headset that was around. It was built by her in a garage, and those red lights on top were they were tracking you within the space because they'd set up cameras, and it was a completely custom build. But it really had an effect on people, and we knew something had changed. And so that summer, we decided that autumn, we decided to run a Oculus Rift hack, even though we didn't really know what we were doing. So we got Oscar Raby, who had come to the festival along, and this, yes, look at that old headset, it's great. So, and this was the call that we put out. And in the past, all of our labs had really focused on filmmakers first, and that's what we expected to get from this. We were a documentary film festival. Generally, like documentary film festivals, just get documentary filmmakers to come along to their labs. But surprisingly, we barely had any. I think we had 2 on the whole lab out of like 26 participants. And we were struck by how many artists, sound recordists, and particularly theatre makers came along to that. And it kind of changed the way we worked from there on in. So from the people that came on that original lab, these are the people that have kind of gone on to do immersive stuff. So, for instance, Colin Nightingale, who works at Punch Drunk Theatre in the UK, he recently created this immersive exhibition at the Saatchi Gallery. Toby Coffey from the National Theatre has done loads of VR productions now. But this is the most recent one, Draw Me Close, which is amazing. It uses a live actor in motion capture suit to be your mother throughout this experience of you growing up and coming to terms with her death, effectively. And then Anagram, who made an immersive installation a few years ago called Door into the Dark that used only eye beacons. There was no virtual reality involved. They gave you a sense of being blind, have gone on to create 2 other projects now, the Collider and the BBC's Make Noise. And then, I can't remember his name, but he created an augmented reality installation at the Victoria Gallery in Liverpool. So these are the other labs that we work on. So we run the annual CPH lab, which is based more around individual projects, pitching for funding and developing them, but developing them through fast prototyping kind of exercises. And then we run things like Off-Piste and Virtual Reality Storytellers Guild, which are basically like proto versions of that original Oculus hack that we did in Liverpool many years ago, which are all about trying to build a community of people that can draw on each other's experiences and expertise in order to create a virtual reality kind of network in a location. The labs, the idea behind them all is that there's always a user-centered approach, so thinking audience first, who is going to use this, why. Especially in the old days, that was very much part of what we did. It was people wanting to pitch their projects, but instead of working from project first, working from audience first, and using lots of user-centered, like user experience design principles in developing projects. It's about individuals rather than projects, so bringing together people from loads of different creative disciplines to work together collaboratively and learn from each other. Hack-style prototyping, so fast, quick prototyping, intense sessions on ideas, and always multidisciplinary. That's the key. And then just a note on virtual reality as a medium and how we've landed on it so comfortably, I think, is because I don't think there's another medium that allows for such cross collaboration between disciplines. Like if going back through interactive filmmaking or kind of other interactive projects, augmented reality, virtual reality really needs people that understand space, but it needs people that understand drama, it needs people that understand art, it needs people that really understand sound design. And there's so many areas that you can draw upon. One of the labs we did, a illustrator came along. He was an illustrator for children's books. And he said, I've got no idea what I'm doing. And he was really unsure of himself in the first couple of days. But at the end, he was so pleased because he was like, I've just been able to walk through one of my own drawings. Like, I would never be able to do that. And that's so cool because none of the filmmakers would have thought of creating the entire environment from this guy's illustrations that were literally sketched in Biro and then scanned in and put into a 3D environment. So yes, the Off-Piste Lab. I'm running out of time, I am. This was our mission, to build a multidisciplinary network of creatives and technologists to accelerate narrative VR production in Norway. Big task. So our participants came from like a very wide variety of backgrounds. These are all of them, I think. I think the only people we didn't have were people from radio, maybe, and podcasting. But I think everybody else, and dance. Next time, we need to get some dancers. These were the mentors. So we had a kind of variety of people from across the filmmaking world, from academia, like kind of Verity, to documentary with Gayatri and Garbo, to art and interactivity with Maths and Mike, and then our very own Ellen as well, from games and interactive. So we had 29 multidisciplined participants. We kicked off the whole lab with a day-long event featuring talks from some of our mentors, but also some guests. We opened that up to the students at the film school in Lillehammer as well, so more people could get some experience of what was going on. And then we went up into the mountains, as Ellen said, to the hotel, where we all got cabin fever for 7 days, and locked ourselves into VR headsets and small rooms to build prototypes. Yes, so we started off with a lot of brainstorming and a lot of post-it notes and lots of pieces of paper, doing quick prototype, kind of quick pitches with each other to try and create some ideas that were kind of found in the room. And then people then were able to pick their teams by attaching themselves to a project, and about amount of horse trading went on during that experience. And then what followed was 6 days, 5 days of prototyping with constant mentoring sessions that we call watering holes, giving the teams constant feedback, and lots of people working into the night in order to get things made. We even had a impromptu motion capture studio set up using bed sheets. And takeaways, so I think what we learned from the lab was that there's significant talent, drive, and curiosity for VR production here in Norway. It takes a village, so meaning that like the cross-disciplinary makeup of the lab really benefited everybody involved. I think it's always very dangerous to get a bunch of filmmakers in a room. You have to throw in the wild cards in order to make something really exciting happen. Lack of access to content, yes. So at the start of the lab, definitely people just really hadn't seen enough content. And it's an industry-wide issue. And now we have the beginnings of a network, which I think we're going to hear a bit more about later on. There we go. Thank you.
So much, Tom. It was quite the experience, and we are now working to trying to create the same type of lab next autumn. So hopefully for anyone here interested, there will be something to apply for. And just follow the news from the film school, and you will get it if when we get it all sorted. Also, we'll have a break now. I think we'll... and also on your tables is this sheet that describes the 6 prototypes that were made at the lab. I think we have 5 of them here in 3 VR stations. And I think we'll keep the length of the break, 20 minutes. And I would encourage you to just sort of run to the stations so that you can get to see them. I think we might be able to get 2 or 3 people to see each installation during the break. One of the stations is in the room along the corridor. So after the break, we will have presentations of 3 of the projects, then a new break, then the next 3, and then summing up, we're also putting together a panel of the participants so that you all can ask all the questions you might have. So we'll have a break until 15:10. And please grab hold of people, start discussing, and check out the demos. I'll see you back. Thank you. welcome back. Now we'll have, I hope some of you got to see some of the demos in the break. We'll have 3 presentations from 3 of the teams now before the next break. And I've asked the teams to try to be a bit shorter than in the program, so that we sort of save the breaks for experiencing the VR, because that's essential, at least in my opinion. So first out is the team behind As the Lilies Bloom, and please introduce yourself. I think you'll do it best. Thank you.
I'm the Nøkken. No, I'm Ellen Lande, and I'm presenting As the Lilies Bloom. It was one of the projects at Offpist from a lovely team of 4 members. Thomas, which is the art designer and 3D artist, Hedvig, which they did lilies and music, and Ståle, which were the game developer. And our entry point is Theodor Kittelsen and his painting Nøkken. As you see here, the quality is really shitty, and that's how you start in a prototype. You start with something which is far off, and then you have to immerse yourself in it. And what we are focusing on here is that you can be embodying the Nøkken and exploring the story from the perspective of this mythological creature, which usually is very terrifying and scaring, and is meant to make us keep far away from these beautiful lilies and the dangerous veins they have. So during this story, you can experience as the Nøkk and investigate the pond, the lilies, and most important, the interpretation of the work of Theodor Kittelsen. And when we go afterwards into the artwork, Thomas will show you a lot of the artwork of Kittelsen. But just to give you a part of the journey, because the part of the journey is that you experience a twist on our relationship to nature, because normally nature might be threatening, like, you know, if you drown in the pond. But what if, when you embody the Nøkken, you feel threatened by the humans, which here will be a woodcutter, and you have to both experience a belonging to this strange and murky waters and everything, but also experience the threat, and then you have to surface and deal with the threat. So when we work with this, you see that Kittelsen, he has a lot of stories about, you know, the terrifying, the death, etc. And we want to use the texture, the material of Kittelsen to go deeper in from what you first see is a prototype, and then to develop this kind of flavor in your experience. Yes? Film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and there will be 3 minutes for questions.
So during our 3 days up in Lillehammer in the Høyfjellshotellet, we managed to make this little demo.
And our presentation is in the room further away. Oh, imagine now that this has different colors, the textures are like Kittelsen. Could the music be louder, please? And there's voice-driven narrative, so you can make bubbles. And in the prototype it's scripted, but maybe the movement is not going to be scripted. And there's a beautiful folktale music, which is reflecting upon the Kittelsen work. And be aware of the already threat against nature captured. So what we want you to experience under the water is belonging and curiosity, and also to see that you can participate in this. And normally you could raise your head and you could see all the lilies through the water And we want to play with the refractions and the reflections and the light. But this is what you can do in 3 days. Yeah. Time to get up. Fight the lumberjack. Yeah. Yeah. Just. So you see the lilies has quite a glow. Of course, when you're in a prototype, first you do something quick in one of the programs. Then later, when you have more time and resources, you can go into detail and textures.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go into... oh, where's my mouse? There it is. You can try the demo outside if you want. We still have brought it with us, what we made in Lillehammer. And it's quite an amazing experience just to see what you can do in 3 days, to see if this is a world that you want to inhabit. What we didn't think that we managed to do was create the entire universe as we saw it in our head, especially when it came to the visuals, but the idea is there. So I made like this little visual documentation to take you through our ideas of further development of this project. The idea is to take inspiration from Kittleson's magical yet terrifying world, which is normally is. He drew a lot of fairy tales, which were magical and mystical, but also very terrifying, and how we can interpret this into an experience where you're not only watching a Kittleson painting, but you get to inhabit it and step into it. In our painting, we are in this world, which is Nøkken's world, and taking inspiration from his different images, including one which is the picture of Nøkken underwater, which is called Nøkken is Fishing, and it's just him holding up a little lily. And taking inspiration from the different elements of Theodor Kittelsen into the visuals will help us embody this world, and also creating this world with a physical space, which is this pond and this area around it. And there's also, you have two physical places to be, under the water and over the water, but there are also two mental states of this creature. You have his very subdued, he's part of this pond and he's very contempt. And then you have the threatened version of Nøkken, where he feels threatened, he has to do something. And finding visual ways and aids to make you feel like this. Right now in the demo, you have the red headache effect that we call it. We might go further. We might do the entire landscape red, or make him see red, or something like that. There's a lot of things that we can explore at least. So these are some of the visual elements that you can find in Kittleson's painting. You have the very corny, not corny, but textured grass. You have the little painted petals. So you can see there's not a lot of very crisp details, but it has a lot of details in the way it's moving around with all the little dobs and knobs. And it's almost it's almost constantly moving. So what we're missing from our demo right now is the sense of these reflections, because a lot of his paintings has these reflections in the water. And also our demo right now is very dark, mostly to hide all the details that we couldn't get right. But what we want to do is take up the light to go closer to his palette, which is more inspired from the Dusk and Dawn era. And you take this in the background and into the water as well. Right now it's very dark, but we want it more murky. We need more details in the corners and stuff like that. So we're floating blissfully underwater, and the peaceful dead, you can see the skeletons and the textures on the skeleton. And this is actually just an image taken from the prototype, and I took it into Photoshop, and I went crazy. Just putting in some volumetric fogs, and we want the colors to shine through, and the reflections in the water roof. And we can do a lot, mainly with effects, really. The assets isn't the big problem. The problem is the atmosphere. As long as we get that right, then the rest will be quite easy, I think. Mm. And of course, we have to embody this little guy. The first one image there is Theodor Kittelsen himself, which is his self-portrait. And we're sort of thinking about plastering his face on the woodcutter, just to have him has his own little cameo in there. But also this is the background here is Theodor Kittelsen's work. The other one is an English painter from the same era, which is also can be an inspiration for us. So as you can see, there's a lot of work still left of all the things that we have to fix. But the thing is, now that we've done that 3-day workshop, like just working intensely for 3 days, it doesn't seem impossible anymore. It just seems like, okay, we just need a couple of more weeks and we'll be done, which is fun. So we're in the right direction. We're not quite there yet, but I think we have something that we can show off, and I think if you try the demo out there, you know where we want to go. So this is the rest of the team. There's one person missing here who has signed up since then, and that's Raphael here. And he'll join us too.
Yes, and one more team member, because Christian Mosvold, who made the sun, has picked up the project.
Yes.
So we are in the best hands when it comes to help the way to get distribution, the way to look at festivals, the way to look at further development. And also here, when we work, it's important to say that we are learning. The process is a very steep way, but we are also learning, as Ellen said, to play together. And it's great fun to see how we can ignite each other during this process, but also from exploring and taking from Kittelsen, like the element that Thomas just showed with the man in the fog, you know, this mistiness, the murkiness, to see how we are drawn to these elements of Kittelsen that we want you to explore in this piece, which is going to be both the emotional journey, but a journey to close up on a very, very important painter, not only in how he paints, but his relationship to nature. So I think, you know, we have two messages here. It is Kittelsen, but it's Kittelsen, how he sees nature and how he embodies nature, which I think is very actual for the present day.
Yes.
Any questions?
I'll just step out of the light to see if there's any hand.
When we were presenting in the other room, a lot of people had question technical, but also if you have some question about the visual or the emotional journey, please feel free. And if you're too shy, please feel free to address Thomas. Oh, there.
Behind
Thomas and me in the breaks.
Hi, it's a sound. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the context the experience will be presented in.
Yes. The concept that we're trying to get now is mainly the festivals, and also having it as a part of an exposition. I can't say that word now right now.
Permanent exhibition.
Exhibition, thank you.
Yeah.
In relation to Kittelsen's painting in the National Theatre.
Yes.
No, National
yes,
Art
there are already some museums in Norway, several places who have picked up artistic projects, documentary artistic projects, to get a closer view and a closer embodiment or immersiveness in artists. So we will follow this track, and therefore we are very lucky to be a part of the projects that Christian Mosvold, who has this expertise already, to build on this. But we also have targeted other ways. You know, our botanical flavor has led us also to want to go enter the botanical museum, to look much richer on it. But I also think for kids this is a very important, you know, to feel safe underwater. Especially since Oslo has no swimming pools left since January next year. Yeah? Next question. Come on. Last question.
No?
There will be a chance afterwards as well.
Yes.
We will have the panel.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Where?
Maureen Thomas, please.
Maureen. Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much for a very clear and stimulating presentation. I was just wondering about how the interactivity works as the person is entering this world.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure I can find out from the demo, which I haven't yet seen, but could you just speak about how you conceived it?
Some is sound-driven, so you have to raise your voice to participate.
Well, it's mostly a scripted experience right now. You start on the water, and then you'll submerge, and you'll end up with the woodcutter, and like realize that journey just happening in front of you. But we also added like an interactive element of using your voice that creates like a magical atmosphere, which is supposed to be a reflection of Nøkken. He has like a very luring sound, that will bring you to the water to him. We are hoping to further develop that. That is in this slide here. You can see interactivity, moving the lilies with colliders, moving your head up and down the water, and sound-driven movements in general. So there's a lot of things like in this demo in itself, it's a lot scripted right now. That's what we managed to do in the 3 days, unfortunately.
That's what we managed so well to do in 3 days.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very positive team.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, applause, big applause.
And we would like to thank Offpist. There has been a very steep learning exhibition, and especially small things like you think you can just take it onto the other Googles, like onto the Vive, which isn't easy at all. So I think every part of the puzzle is interesting, and you have to learn everything. That's so good.
Thank you, because I was just about to thank you guys, and sort of on behalf of Offpist, we're so happy, we're so impressed, and we're so happy with the quality of the projects. Of the 6 prototypes, I know that 2 are working on the projects to develop them into full-blown experiences, which is fantastic. I mean, 2 out of 6, and there might even be more. So thank you for an amazing job. And now we'll hear from the second project that is also looking to continue, which is Sense of Color. Kim Bergman Larsen. Yep. Oh, Chris is both Kim. Yes. Introduce yourself and yes. Yep. No. Yes. Maybe I can just, while they're getting their mics, the third project, No Matter Where, is the documentary project with interviews. So this one was quite artistic with a painting. Now we get one that is more, well, you'll see more on the interaction in many ways. And then the third one is with sort of documentary makers exploring volumetric capture. So the 3 have sort of nice different starting points to this. And then we'll have a coffee break, a bit over 4 probably, before we present the last 3 projects. So here comes Sense of Color.
Hello. You can hear me? Yeah. Sorry. I'm not going to do Tom's mistake of speaking without. There we go. Nope. It's not that easy, huh?
Maybe give it some time.
There you go. Aha. So, I'm Chris. This is Kim and Silje. We're 3/5 of the team that worked on this project we're going to speak about today. We were asked to tell a little bit. Is that me? A little bit about our experience at Offpist and how we came to our idea. I think the most memorable thing for those of us who were at Offpist was the 5 kilos of reindeer meat we had for every meal. I don't know what the correlation is between reindeer meat and creativity, but there was something there. I'm sure of it. The idea, the ideation was done in the first 3 days of the lab or something. Our idea came from a drawing. This isn't the original, but it looked a lot like this. We were asked to draw different things on a sheet of paper and pass it along, and different people added to that sheet of paper, and we were given this barren landscape, ruins, with a man with some sort of survival helmet on, a football maybe, and a puddle. And from this, we imagined that he was in some a post-apocalyptic world, and underneath the puddle there was a portal to a room, his bunker. And the bunker, we started drawing it, and it looked a lot like the room at Arles by Van Gogh. So we started imagining that maybe this was a story about a man who ventures out in the world and collects color to color in his bunker that looks like Van Gogh's room at Arles. The idea was crazy, and it didn't work. And we got really frustrated. The ideas just got crazier and crazier. And we figured out through help from Tom and the other mentors, Elin, that and all these watering holes they had us do, that the solution was simplicity. Is this really bad? Oh, no. Technical issues, of course. Okay. I won't touch it. Okay, so the solution was simplicity. So we figured out after a while that what was interesting was not coloring a bunker, but rather maybe coloring the world around us. That you were in a lifeless, colorless world, and that you would actually color the world, not your bunker. And so we came up with this. This is the prototype that we have here now. It's called A Sense of Color. The idea has since changed names. Celia is going to present that to you afterwards. The basic idea was that you would start in a different kind of bunker, a bunker that actually had color. And you'd collect the colors, and you'd go through a portal, as seen there. And after collecting the colors with a magical orb, and you'd go out into this desolate landscape and fill in the colors. And we realized that bringing life to the landscape was a really interesting interplay. We had a composer on our team, Sigrid Anita, who's not here today. We figured out this beautiful interplay between sound and color. And so we started playing around with the idea of sound and color, which Silly will speak about more later. Kim's going to say some words about his experience as well.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly say a little bit about the experience of being there. I would call myself a VR professional. I started in '95 with VR, and it's probably since 2011 done a lot of VR projects. So I didn't really know what I was going to get from the VR lab, although I was excited about it. So in fact, I had pitched in my application to Offpist, I wanted to work with how light, color, and space could affect the player in an interactive VR story. But I did not bring this pitch forward at the lab. I just happened to end up on a group that was working exactly with that. So how was that for serendipity? What I really did like was how we developed the ideas as a collaborative team, and that we all got ownership. I think that's one of the essences of a successful lab. And I will try to take this with me because I'm also teaching VR. And also the extremely knowledgeable and productive water holes we had. I think that was what surprised me again, how really they moved, especially for us, our project forward. And I guess it's going to be difficult to replicate this type of lab if you don't get equally competent mentors the next time. I was surprised how much we could do in such a short time, and I must say it was key to have one developer on each team, somebody who could actually program in Unity and New VR. But yet, it was the richness that came from the cross multidisciplinary background that brought the magic. So for me, the Off-Pist workshop has become a reference for how to teach VR story playing, which is my newfound word for this. And that's it. And here's Celia.
Okay, so a sense of color has since developed into harmony, or at least that is our working title for now. And in short, we're missing a photo here, but... It's fine, I think.
I don't know why that's not showing up. Oh.
Wow.
Just imagine a beautiful picture behind the text.
Maybe not full screen it?
Yeah. I guess we can't full screen. No, it's strange. Close. Some notes on a presentation tomorrow. No one steal my ideas. Okay.
Just go window full screen and then you get
Yeah. Where?
window all the way up.
Okay.
Don't touch it.
Just don't touch it. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just do it from here. It's fine.
So, in short, you journey through worlds that you have the power to restore. You bring nature back to life by adding color to it, and each color you use unlocks its own piece of music. And when you are in this experience, when you change the colors in the environments around you, you will also change this corresponding music. And basically, the environment around you becomes your own canvas, and by coloring it, you also create your own symphony. So...
my notes.
Yeah, very good.
So what I think from our week at Pellestova, what we took with us is sort of a unique way of working, because the way that we are designing this experience really mirrors the way that a user would experience it. Because when you enter into this VR environment, then you basically create the world around you with color and music. And that's also how we do it. So instead of starting with a narrative or starting with sort of intentions, we just start with color and music. And I think that was, for me, sort of a aha moment when we were at Pellestova, when we were in the ideation phase and trying to figure out what is this experience going to be about. And then some of us said, and oh yes, and then we have to remember to add music. And then Sigrid Anita, our composer, said, "Oh yes, musical is always added last." and then I at least thought that, yes, why is that? Why shouldn't we start with music? What could happen if we start with music instead? So that's what we did. We sat down and we found some colors and tried to research what different colors symbolize and how could music symbolize the same thing. And from that, these worlds and environments that you can experience and color have been created. And the frame of the experience is 1 day. So you enter, you put your VR headset on, you are in darkness, and suddenly some colorless grass lights up in front of you, and you are presented with a color palette that is attached to your wrist somehow. And then you are urged through use of symbols and sound and maybe some vibration in the hand controller. You are urged to pick a color from your palette and go over to the grass and color it. And when you do that, then a wind will blow up from the grass and it will sort of blow around you, and the whole environment around you will be fully lit, and you understand that you're now in a colorless landscape and your job is to color it. And when you do that, then when you color different elements such as grass and trees and water, then it will also come to life with animations as well. And you start up in the mountains early in the day, and then we will add different landscapes that have different color palettes and different moods that also affect the music that you will move throughout this day. And then finally you will end at night on a beach, and the sun will set and the scene will go to black, and then you can choose to start your day over again. And each time you go through this day coloring landscapes, you can do it differently each time. So if you're feeling bright and energetic one day, maybe you color everything bright green, and maybe if you're feeling a bit sad one day, you want to color the magical forest in only dark colors, and then you get all the dark symphony instead. I don't know if we have to talk about the spec sheet so much.
No.
This is our team of 5 people. And some, these are some screenshots from the prototype that we have now.
It's actually not in the prototype. It's in the, it's
in
the old one.
Yeah.
Mm. It's a video.
Yeah, it's playing.
Sounds come from here.
Oh, it's from there.
Yeah. That's the last one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't hear that, but as you add elements of color, you add elements to the musical score in the background. And that's our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
As mentioned before, there will be opportunity for questions afterwards as well. And your prototype is in that corner. So please check it out. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to mention Sigrid, the composer. She's amazing, and she's doing a PhD in music right now. And it's just to see how her contribution to this project has really created a whole different experience. So thank you so much. And then the third project now is No Matter Where. Hilde, and yes. There you go.
So, no full screen, right? We'll try.
I think that was the danger, yeah.
So we can try. Okay. Okay, where's my water? Is that my water? Don't know if you can hear my heartbeat through this thing, but okay. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the film school and the NFV lab and the other contributors. And of course, all our amazing mentors for making this possible. Our project was an idea thrown in at the end of the first development days. An idea of a project that would be based in reality, where we could tell stories based on real people's thoughts and perceptions, presented through interviews. As we went along, the project developed into being a VR experience called No Matter Where I Am, based on real interviews presented within a landscape. Our team members and qualifications were Torker Benson, he's a motion graphics designer, and Gustav Kvål, he's a filmmaker and illustrator. They're both associate professors at the Bergen University. Then we have Jennifer Marino here, copywriter and editor, producer and artist. And myself, Hilde Kjøs, documentary filmmaker and photographer. And also we had Rafal. We were very lucky to have Rafal Hanslo on our group as a technical person. He was also one of the mentors at the course, and he works as a creative technologist here at the film school. Okay, so to our prototype. The most important aspect of our project, and which is different to the other projects in the workshop, is that this project is based completely on the real environment and real people. This is what makes this project close to documentary, because it covers elements that are taken directly from real life. Whereas the other prototypes were created on the computer and thereby more fictional in a way, we haven't changed the reality too much. You are introduced into a landscape which you explore in your own way in the experience, where you will encounter 3 people at different times and places as you go along. Each interview lasts for about 3 minutes. 2 are set inside the landscape, and 1 is set inside the character's own kitchen. Several simple sound and visual effects will direct you and make things happen in front of you. And the whole experience takes about 10 minutes, depending on if you get lost in the fog or... So inside the project, there were 4 distinctive elements. First, we have long-distance landscape. Should we show a picture or something? But we can... a long-distance landscape, which is based on panoramic photography, taken in the mountains with a fisheye lens, 360. In HDR, a high dynamic range color depth. This process gives you a certain freedom, and you can then edit your image with more freedom in post-production. The second element that we use is photogrammetry, where you take several photographs, and that means a lot of photographs, of the object or a place, and from different angles. And in our case, it was a landscape or in a kitchen. Then you apply these photographs into a program and use special software that finds similarities between these photos, and then create a mesh. This mesh recreates the form and puts all these photographs on it to recreate the scene. Then we use volumetric capture, which is a third element. It is similar to photogrammetry, but it records movement and changes the form. It was made with a single Kinet camera, and compared to photogrammetry, it is like film compared to a still photo. This is how we recorded our interviews. And the fourth element is additional special effects, like creating fog and clouds. In addition to the atmospherical effects that we have used, like in a normal post-production process in normal, like flat documentary. Okay, so our achievements. As already mentioned, we used a lot of elements based directly on real environment and real people. We didn't create elements that are artificial, except for the atmospherical element of fog, which you cannot record. But since the fog was something that inspired us, it was fog all around us during these 8 days, we decided it was important to create fake fog for the environment that we created. And in this way, by adding a fake element, we actually added more, it made it more realistic than it would have been without it. Of course, this particular experience is unfinished, and it works mainly as a prototype. The interviews are only as a practice, and would have had to be more ambitious and worked at if we were making a real film. That was a challenge we had to find real, good interviews in such and characters for such a short time. Let's see. So our goal was not to make a finished piece in this short amount of time, but to gain experience in all these elements that we now have described. An experiment with how they can work together when you present them within the goggles. We were particularly interested in how to do interviews in VR, and have discovered that this is a real challenge due to the lack of editing possibilities. The experience has a great value to us in the sense of seeing how difficult it actually is to make interviews in VR. That was really surprising to me. But also makes you want to really try and find the key to how to do that. We also experience how to build a set, a location VR. This is another way of presenting a project to people. When you create a venue or an installation, like we have back here, is like 3 by 3 meters, I think, and you walk within a space. We decided how big the space should be and fill the space with place and a narrative. We wanted to finish this piece by introducing a real person into the experience. This was something that we tried to work on, but we didn't have time to complete it, and we were then dependent on really good help from the mentors, and it was a lot of chaos at the end, and everyone were very busy. But this, if we had been able to do this little fun thing by introducing a real person, it would have made it more like a performance art installation or like a theater experience. If this prototype were to be taken any further, this could be an exciting, surprising element that would have a kind of a wow factor, like when you are in an environment and you meet these interviews and you hear stories, and suddenly you are like in the middle of an interview yourself. But alongside with a deeper emotional subject, this could have made it into an even more emotionally driven VR experience. Yeah. Do you want to do this yourself?
As Hilda mentioned, there was a lot of fog, but there was also amazing landscape beauty around us, and that inspired us in addition to something that Hilda brought into the group from the beginning, which was the David Lynch interview project, whereby taking in these small moments of regular people's lives, it lifts up humanity in a way that Kim Kardashian can't manage to. So I'm assuming you've read that already, so I won't go through that. How do we take something like that, which, as Hilda was mentioning, calling them interviews, how do we make this, why is it VR? How do we bring it into that? And we play on the emotional side of it, but honestly, we didn't have to push it that far. Manipulate, I mean, because the way VR works, you already feel like you're closer to a person versus seeing them on a flat screen where, yeah, their story might trigger an emotion from you, but you're separate from it. In our setup, you are kind of meeting them in a way. And yes, it was a challenge to get 3 people, which was our goal. How do we get someone to trust us in this short amount of time? So Hilda's documentary experience really helped, and we got a local to agree to be in it, and we ended up going to her actual house and doing photogrammetry there. But within this short period of time, to make it something real, 2 people from our team, how should I say, sacrificed ourselves for the greater good. And that was myself and Gustav, who was the man you saw in this other picture. Yes, the lack of editing was something we definitely was a surprise, because you couldn't have for me in my work outside of this, I love the surprises that can come up from interviews. And you couldn't allow for that sort of to establish the intimacy and the trust that you would in a setting outside of VR, so we had to work around that. Okay, let's see. Hilda talked a lot about this already. Yes, and there you see Gustav in his interview setting. And here you can see that he was actually in our studio that we created, but we went around outside and took photos and then sort of merged the two. I don't know if there's a better way to say that. There you see one of our mentors, Mads, supervising us. Yes, this, I would say that we were not so popular initially. when we were doing interviews, and it quickly came that we had to have our own space because we couldn't tell everybody, shh, don't talk. And you can see now a bit of the space that we ended up getting, and so we got even more of this gorgeous landscape to inspire us. I think that's Raphael out doing photogrammetry. And yeah, again, who can't be inspired by this?
And this is the 360, right?
This one? Yeah.
It was there.
And I wonder how many pictures, this would be nice to count up, how many do we have to take to get this photogrammetry reel? Yes, and we did quite a bit of prototype testing, as I understand, a large amount for the setting. And that's what we're doing here. I thought Mark, yes, yeah. Going through it. And our heroes.
Raphael.
And here you see, this is me in it. And then in reality, I was sitting in a studio, but, excuse me, sitting on a, yeah, I don't know what you would call that. And Gustav was the first person you meet. And then the local who so kindly agreed to be part of our project. And actually, I'd like to add in here a bit about her. She said something that if you all have time to go through this, we'll hear that kind of inspired me, and I think something to do with the title we ended up to. She says, you know, home, what's home? Home is where I can be myself. And the idea here was that, you know, where is home to each person, and that by going through this, they get to reflect on, well, what is home to me? Do I have a place that I'm really connected to? And she's very connected to, well, the Hafjell area.
Yeah, and I can add that she's a great character. She just stepped in within 10 minutes. She was in this interview situation, and she delivered only 2 takes, and you cannot stop in the interview, so you have to run it for 3 minutes. So she was told to speak for 3 minutes, and we gave her just a few instructions. And it was really, it was nice because she has a contrast to Jennifer's story. So do you have to think differently when you work in VR with interviews? And that was something that came out like, okay, it's good because they are their stories are contrasty. And also I have to add about Jennifer, because we also experience that you can feel in this. It's a very different piece because it's kind of slow. You go in there and it's more existential. It's like the idea is that you're supposed to, you know, put your own life into it as well somehow and question your own like sense of place and when you walk around in this landscape. But it's a little bit long. Every character talks for a little bit long, like maybe we are doing right now. But also it was. It's important to be there for so long that you actually do create emotion. I find that that's the challenge in VR, to create emotions, where you know, like you do in a normal film or a documentary. And actually, that's where Jennifer came in as a last character, and you delivered. You know, you did that, but you need to have patience to listen through all the 3 interviews, and then you get to a point where you actually, yeah, she. Yes, so it's possible, but it demands a lot of work, and you need to be kind of lucky with the interviews, because you cannot talk to the person you are interviewing during the interview, as how we did it anyway.
Right. Let's see. And as you can see here, sort of you're going from location to location where a new person stands up as you approach them, and you're called in by sound cues that end up being related to the content that each person is giving. And when that person finishes with their what they have to say, they sit back down, and then you hear the cue, sound cues for the next, to go to the next one. And as Hilda mentioned, the final, one thing that we really wish we'd been able to do up in Hafjell was that when you've seen the last person, which then would be me, you go and you think you're being called to a 4th person, and you feel a hand, and the person's real. And we had really interesting dialogues with some of the mentors talking about how emotion can be, how do I put it, intimacy, all of that can be so much stronger to where somebody might feel stepped on, or that you have to be careful in a way that you wouldn't have to be if it was on a flat screen. So it would be really fun to play with how that could come out and be effective so that it would add to the piece instead of scare somebody. Yeah, that's what Gustav's doing here. Yeah, next steps would be potentially different types of interviews, different people, and this real life fourth person. That's it.
Are there any questions? We could do one or two quickly.
No technical questions, please.
Fantastic, thank you very much. We'll have, I think we'll stretch the break until 20 past, so that we should have time to have two people go through the different demos. After the break, Tom, with help, will present the last 3 projects, which are have more of a linear narrative. So we're so happy that the prototypes, the projects are also so different, exploring different sides, and this a really interesting deep dive into interviews in VR. So we'll meet again at 20 past, and there are refreshments, and there are prototypes, which are also refreshing. Yes, thank you. If you know what I mean. Tom, no rest for you, I'm afraid. And if I could ask any one of the participants who would like to be part of the panel afterwards to make sure you get a mic from the guys, our lovely helpers in the back, while Tom and I are presenting, so that we'll won't lose any time there. And are you fine with the presentation you had, Tom? Is it just yes? You continue. So, who is controlling the lights? Could we help some help with the lights? Thank you very much. So now Tom will present the last three projects with some help. I'll talk a bit about an initiative afterwards, and then at the end we'll put many of the participants here so that you can get to ask them about their experiences and any other questions before we end off with eating the rest of the goodies and testing VR until we have to leave. That's the plan. Yes. So there you are, Tom.
Yeah, I think it just needs to wake up. Is it on standby? Okay, great. Yeah, so as Ellen mentioned, I'm just going to run through the final three projects with some help from some of the other participants as well. So number one is the journey of water. So this experience, you embody a water particle and go on the journey through the water cycle. The interesting thing about this project is one of the team members was an animator, and so she hand-painted a number of the textures that were then put into the experience. Dwayne, you can come and also talk a little bit about it as I play the video.
Yeah, so our main thing was to try and come up with a narrative from A to Z, almost according to kind of a three-act structure, and working with the entire idea of embodiment, like Tom was saying. My background is as a 2D filmmaker, so feature film. Writing and directing feature film. So I was really interested in all the new storytelling potential that you have kind of within VR, but still working with a kind of narrative which is similar to 2D and just expanding it. So hopefully we'll get the video in a second.
Yeah, it's doing that thing again. Come on. It's not. It's on Drive, I think. Oh, I might be able to play it here. No. Oh. No, we've got the same problem.
Is there any other way we can play it?
Yeah.
Just send it to me. Press the share button on top.
Yeah.
Just press T-FOSSLET TFOSSELI @gmail.com.
Oh, where's the @ on these?
And it's out and two.
Alts and 2.
I mean, doing off-piece was very, very interesting because, like I said, I was curious about how you could take narrative across to VR. And I had no experience of it beforehand apart from seeing a couple of pieces. So storytelling in VR was just so different as to how you worked in 2D, because in 2D, of course, it's a very passive experience. Whereas in VR, you have to come up with ways as to how you can interact with the environment. And also just the idea of embodiment was what was so interesting, because you feel the experience physically. And I think that was one of the things that we really wanted to play with. On a very simple level, there's this idea of kind of disorientation within VR. And we had this idea of wanting to take a water droplet, which then became steam. So you went up into the clouds, and then you came back down a number of times. And what I found interesting personally was that to what speed can you take people up and down, so you're right on the edge of kind of disorientating them, but there's kind of a pleasure in that. And that's what I found really, really curious, because how can you make something which is almost overwhelming? You know, that's, for me, a very interesting thing about VR, is that how are you right on the edge of something which you feel physically and is kind of frightening you a touch. So are we at the start here?
Yeah.
So here we're actually inside the bubble, and you can kind of hear sounds from the outside, and what you see here is on the hand controllers, you actually realize that you're embodying the bubble and embodying kind of the actual pieces of the water yourself as you're in the bubble. So at the moment you don't quite understand where you are, and then you click a button and you realize that you're on a leaf, and the next time that you click, you start to turn to steam and you move upwards. So there we go, we're now part of the steam, and you're going up into the clouds. So at this point you're moving up, and you really have this kind of feeling of not quite disorientation, but all of the ideas, the sensory elements of your body are kind of being messed with a little bit. And as I was watching people have the experience, it was quite interesting to see that some people would really enjoy it. Other people will almost kind of have to sit down because the disorientation was too much. So then you come up into the clouds, and we actually built the assets, but we didn't have time to put it in. It starts to turn into a storm, and then you turn into basically ice, and you become the inside of a snowflake, so that all you can see is just the one snowflake. So then you come back down, and we see that we've moved forward in time, and now we're coming into a city. And again, the speed at which you come down is really interesting as to how you feel the physical change in your body. So all the sound design is now the atmos of being in a city, and you've landed on a leaf, just in the city itself, and then up again through it. So then you arrive in the clouds again, and we start to have the idea of a coming storm. And you're starting to turn into rain. And again, we built the asset, but we didn't have time to put it in. You have this idea of, you start to hear a plane, and the plane is getting closer and closer to you. And of course, depending on kind of where you're looking, you either see it coming, or you just see it go past you. Then you come back down again, and you see that the city is now submerged. And then you go into the water and underneath the city. At the same time, at this point, you've got the controllers back of where you can begin to feel that you're that piece of water again. And what's interesting here is that when you're on this level, if you jump, you can actually take your head out of the water. So you just have these little moments of being able to really control your environment. Then you come back up again, and all of the water comes up until everything is submerged. So of course, with the 3-act structure is you're kind of playing with the idea that you're kind of almost pre-human. Then you have the idea of being in a city and what we've kind of been able to create. And then after that, maybe what kind of comes after us. Then the water starts to disappear, and you're back where we started. So one of the reasons that we wanted to do something like this is being interested in the possibilities of this being kind of like an educational tool. So you could have it in terms of like a class. Once you have VR within all classes, you could get 10 kids to have this experience, have an interactive experience to then start the discussion about climate change. And of course, that would be applicable to a lot of other elements that you could do and have as a start position, whether it would be history or space exploration or any of those things. And also the idea that maybe you could give the kids the separate assets so they can actually build something like this themselves according to their own cities. And that's it.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dwayne. And now, technology. Next is the Ghost Bride. It's a murder mystery virtual reality experience where you are the murder victim. And Emmanuel is going to come up to tell you a little bit more about it.
Right. So the Ghost Bride's well, that's really annoying.
Yeah.
So the Ghost Bride's sort of immersive theatre experience, where you were trying to do something about really presence in a story, which I think is the most important or the most exciting part of virtual reality, and the idea being that an immersive theatre experience would play out in front of you, and you, as a poltergeist, would be able to, in a very limited fashion, interact with the world around you, not through a normal, an expected virtual reality thing of being able to throw chairs around the room, but simply by pushing books over and throwing cutlery and stuff. The idea being that the players, or the characters, would then react to your actions in ways that would interrupt or diverge the narrative. So not a linear experience, but a sort of a what can you do to this play experience. We built a simple prototype where, yeah, you could. A murder has happened. Your murder has happened, and in order to change the narrative, you could simply push the murder weapon into view of the characters, and they would react to that piece of information. It was quite challenging and with quite rough, but myself and two of the other members, Lina Reinsbakken and Samuel Ambroise, are moving ahead with the project, which we find very exciting. So that's yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much.
And then finally, the Seventh Master, based on the folktale's Seventh Master of the House. I think that's what it's called. And in this experience, you are the Ash Lad, and you reach the house, and you have to go through 7 different rooms, meeting the fathers upon fathers upon fathers in each room, until you reach the 7th Master of the House. The whole experience was drawn and built in Oculus Quill, which is like a drawing tool within VR itself. And then the team also puppeted from inside Oculus Quill as well. So the whole experience was made pretty much from start to finish, more or less, in VR, which is kind of fascinating. The style that they went for was this kind of irreverent South Park snarkiness. There's a lot of swearing, and each master of the house is based on one of the 7 dwarfs. So there's a sleepy, lazy one, and there's an angry one, and there's a grumpy one. And yes, I think we've got it in one of the rooms. Raphael?
Where is it?
Yeah.
The other.
In the other room. Okay. So that is all of the projects that were left, I think. Great.
Thank you so much. And that's amazing, Emmanuel. Then that means that 3 out of 6 prototypes coming from an ideation process while having this cabin fever are actually being followed up, which is it's so nice when thinking, sort of looking back to what was the goal for this off-piste lab from our side. That's an amazing result. So we're very, very happy about that. That is so cool. Let's see. So this is, I mean, we had a fantastic time there. And at the end, we had this summing up. Okay, I poked you a bit, but we ended up all sort of yelling, we are all interactive storytellers, which was fantastic because now we have, since we work together, we actually now have a network of creative people that we can use for both for following up these projects, but also for other ideas. We have someone to ask, and we have a common experience that makes it easier for us to collaborate. And that was also the inspiration for the next initiative, because while being there, I started thinking we need to expand this, because we need to build a Norwegian industry for interactive storytelling. But actually, we're already an industry, Norwegian industry for interactive storytelling, just a very small one. But we're going to change that. So we're building a new industry, and we thought that in order to do that, we need to get together and get to know each other, so that we know our identity and who we are, and also so that we can show others, and especially the funders, let's be realistic here, that we are actually, there are many of us. It's not, if they get an application, it's just not a random quaint VR project. That's fun that this application is here, but that is actually coming from a larger environment, and that we are here now, and that our area will grow. So together with Kim Baumann Larsen, Lina Reinsbakken, and Christian Mosvold, we're sort of the interim group. We've sketched out the vision for the new organization, Producers Association, called Norske interaktive fortellere, Norwegian interactive storytellers. It's really interactive and immersed, but immersed in Norwegian, well, don't go there. I mean, if you have a good suggestion, please try. But Norske interaktive fortellere, we think that will do nicely. Our goals, it's to get to know ourselves, to create an identity for this industry, to be able to show and tell everybody else who we are, that we have an identity, to position interactive storytelling as this third area in the area of film and games. As you've seen now, this isn't games, it's not film, it's a third way of telling stories. And also to build knowledge and respect for interactive storytelling as culture in the sort of public arena and towards funders and other audiences. When we're talking interactive and immersive storytelling, it also quickly became apparent that we need to include physical storytelling in this as well. Because interactive, immersive. It's also about storytelling that spans both physical and digital. It's about transmedia storytelling, all these other versions of storytelling that aren't dependent on a specific technology, but more on your motivation as a storyteller to create an art piece or a cultural experience towards an audience, going from sort of commercially based to pieces of art. So right now we have started putting out information about this association. We hope to fund it, or we will fund it, had a founding meeting in Hamar in January. And we hope that anyone who's interested in this will sign up. I've posted a Google spreadsheet on Facebook for people to sign up, or you could also mail me, and then we will include you in getting news about this, and also hopefully get a good discussion how this organization should be shaped, so that we can really create a clear, effective organization that can lift the profile and get us to be taken more seriously by anyone. We also want to contact the Minister of Culture to show that we exist and that we need to be counted as well when it comes to funding. And when I've also spoken to the NFI, and that these are experiences that are relevant for the classic audiovisual funding of documentary and fiction, which is in accordance with the thinking of NFI. Østnorsk Film Center is going to help us push this out to the regional funds as well. I'm talking with Mark about actually presenting this also potentially at Copenhagen Docs, trying to set this up also in Sweden and Denmark. So Mats Damsbo, who was one of the mentors, he will take this and try to start the discussion in Denmark as well. So that's another result of cabin fever, being in the mountains and seeing how that feels like the next logical step. So this is for producing companies and for producing individuals, so that we will be a producers association. So I hope you'll be interested either to learn more or to be a part of it. So thank you for that. And then the last, before the panel debate, which we'll have now. So if the participants who wants to participate, please come up. I just wanted also to say, lastly, big thanks to Rafal for the tech help in the lab. You were, invaluable. Also, Mike and Mats, the two of the mentors, did a lot of tech help, and the 5 developers that were part of the teams were professional game developers that did an amazing job. And many of the mentors, you can't brag of yourself, can you? But many of the mentors have said that this was an exceptionally high level for a lab, to a large extent because also of the excellent developers. So we got so much done in 3 days, which I think you've seen. So I'd like to invite the panelists up, and if we could turn on the lights again, and then you'll have a last chance to have a discussion with the participants before we end the session by looking at the prototypes. And I think both the water droplet and Seventh Father, we have both of them, don't we, Rafal? Yeah. Yes. So we could mix it up on the stations. Yes. Yes. Again, Rafal with the tech help. Thank you again. Yes. Perfect. Good. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So good to see you again. I mean, it's, yeah. And I thought just to sum the whole thing up, to ask each one of you to just a sentence or two about how the experience, what kind of tools do you feel that you've gained from the experience? Is it sort of, what did you take with you from this, apart from the project you worked on? Is there anything there that sort of opens doors or imagination or creativity that you sort of, for you going forward? So maybe, Ellen, you could start.
Yeah, I don't have
Oh, you did, okay.
It was exceptionally creative, and it was really nice to see how the groups come together and how we worked. And I come from the museum branch, so I don't really have any experience, except that I think that is a really good pedagogical tool and would be good to use in exhibitions. So, and I think the storytelling also, it was really interesting to see how we could make rooms and how you can walk through a story and see also how to use the environment around the game. I don't know. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I think I came into this without any knowledge about VR at all. So for me, it was a very steep learning curve, just diving into everything. But I think the biggest thing that I've taken with me from the workshop is the network of creative people, and to know somebody from each creative profession, really, that I think is really valuable. And many of us are also doing other projects now. And like Sigrid, our composer, she has invited me to be a part of her PhD at her university in Dublin. So it's exciting to see what will come, what more collaborations will come in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I already said a little bit about my experience, so I'm not sure what to add other than, I guess, I already knew how important it is to prototype. But this workshop really reinforced why and how to do it. And you really want to do stupid things and, you know, just try things that maybe they fail, but then you know they fail instead of just working and then 3 weeks down later you start making something as a VR experience and then you find out it really doesn't work. So, yeah. Make prototypes, really crude prototypes, bad-looking prototypes early. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, for me, I guess I could say, you don't have one now. The joy of multidisciplinary working with people from all these different backgrounds, was really eye-opening and fun. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from Off-Piste.
For me, it was, you know, I had such an interest in kind of storytelling and how that was going to function within VR. And I already knew about kind of collaboration and how you did that in 2D, but I had no idea as to how you did that in VR and how you kind of work within the skill sets and what people had. And what was really surprising is how quickly you can get to a prototype. I mean, in terms of 2D, you've got to have a lot of pre-production before you can go and do anything and road test an idea, and you need the narrative there. But here it was amazing to see that in 3 days, if you're working with very talented programmers and developers, and you have enough other people to come up with the story elements yourself as well, then you can get somewhere which road tests an idea very, very quickly. And I think that's the main thing that I kind of take away from it, is beginning to see how another methodology creatively can be built.
I think we all have mics, so you send it back.
Personally, I found it super inspiring, almost like opening a door. I mean, I've been going to virtual reality conferences, I guess you could call them, for several years. So this was taking theory into practice. And the way we interacted, all the participants, the level of maturity, if that's the right way to say it, such that there wasn't the sort of game playing and creative ego sort of that I've seen in many, many, many other settings. So it meant that we got very far really fast with a lot of respect, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. For me, it was a very personal experience, just because I do have a lot of experience with VR as a consumer, but I don't have any experience as a developer, because my field of expertise has always been film and television, and the idea was, does that translate? Can I work with interactive mediums, and will my skills be enough? Because I always thought, like, I think I can do that, but I don't know I can do that. And after a workshop like this, I think now I know that I can do that. I can participate in some way or form and use my skills, not only visually, but also the tools I use translate, which is interesting. So that's been my personal belief. But also the other things, like working together in team, putting in different inputs, well, that's always been like the creative process of every creative collaboration. And I'm not really surprised that works really well in this settings, but it's really interesting just to bring in new people that are not normally associated with storytelling or things. So, yeah.
For me, it's like entering new territory. I didn't have a lot of VR experience, so I had dread, and I felt that the generosity and the level of everybody coming in with huge enthusiasm and really were willing to share, and the possibility to be open, to fail, and to have this very steep learning line, but then to really understand what I've been lacking, both as working as a filmmaker and as a critic. I see that there's fatigue in the audience, and this relationship to the audience, that we can get new enthusiasm by embody, immerse, interact, that we really need, because we need stories like Tom presented earlier today about the 2 Afghan boys, but people don't feel they can cope with it because they have guilt, and by participating in interactive stories, you bypass this problem, which makes the audience open to very important experiences. And I think, the impact, the making of a difference, if it's the sense of color, sorry for not saying harmony, or if it's the drop of water, or the 7 Fathers, it's stories which all have characters, all have flavors, but also you can see the taste of the team. You can feel the team in this project. Like, I didn't know that it was the 7 Dwarf. I was wondering how come they had so much character, but now I see they are smart guys and women. So it's something about, going shoulder by shoulder, but in a more contributing team way, which I think, is, and you also have to reframe the way you think about film production, because sometimes as then a director, are you a dramatical director, are you a storyteller, or are you actually a producer in this new way of emerging these things? Like I asked Tom, who's the director of your story with the kids? The kids themselves, which, is facilitating a way that we can get new stories and understand better. So, I'm so grateful for everybody who's contributed, and also grateful for the stories we and others can tell, which will engage, because we need more engagement for the values, which will make a difference.
I think, speaking as a screenwriter, I'm used to spending, a lot of time just by myself, iterating upon an idea until I can present it to someone who can then go off and make it. And being able to just, in very intense, small period, work together with other creative individuals who, and working off their ideas as well as my own, and seeing them bounce back and forth is extremely rewarding. So it's a different way of working, and I think it definitely something I don't want to do much more of. So, yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful comments, all for me at least. Are there any questions to all these lovely participants who come from different areas and have different backgrounds and are all smiling and part of one group now? Oh, the harmony. Yes. Yep. Yeah, but, there I have web thingy.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the process and your insights, and it has been really, it's as if I've been a part of it a little bit. So it was really insightful for me to listen to your experiences, so thank you for that.
Anyone else? It's also possible to ask Tom something, although he's...
I'd like to know what everybody thinks would be useful from a interactive filmmakers network, storytellers network. What would be the most useful thing for you?
To see the impact you can do with this way of getting close and soaking the viewer into what you want to tell.
I think for me, just having a network of people to talk to about your ideas and about what you're trying to do, because trying to come into VR before this, it was a very sort of a lonely affair, because it wasn't that there weren't people out there, obviously, but how do you get in touch with them? So having a central organisation that can actually bring people together and be a sort of a gathering network is immensely valuable.
I also think as a bystander, just watching for people going, hey, I have this interesting project. I need someone to do this. Would you be interested? And they're like, because then you have a very safe area with people who are open to working with narratives in a very different way than we do in film or theater or games, for that sake. I guess the only difference here between interactive media and games is pretty much like the gaming aspect of it, because, well, yeah.
It's marketing.
Yes.
I also think the possibilities of the media is just, I think it's huge. And I think also you can learn stuff in there and how to use the stories inside. I think it's just going to be bigger and bigger because we can use it to so many different things. So that's going to be very interesting to see how it develops in the future.
Any other questions? Then I think I have the pleasure of saying thank you to this great bunch of friends from my off-piste network. We'll continue to collaborate, and then hopefully we can use this energy also for the new organization and sort of pull more people into this network of ours. And we'll stop now, and we have until 5:30 before we need to leave. So I would just encourage everyone to test more prototypes, and we also have the Seventh Father, the South Park Norwegian adventure thing, created totally in VR. The poor developer, he had red eyes. He did all the animation. He was Chris Gavin from Tromsø. He was. Yeah. Yeah. So, oh well, there is that, and there is more goodies. And you still haven't eaten enough of the Christmas cakes because it's November. So use the opportunity. And thank you so much for coming and for listening to stories of us having enjoyed ourselves at Hafjell. Thank you very much. There's one last thing. I always forget to give the goodies to the participants. And thank God that this is a collaborative area, because the teams will have to collaborate on sharing all the parts. But that should be a no-brainer now that you're so good at it. Thank you very much for your assistance. Okay. Dere var på det team? Dere var same team? No. I'm trying to remember the teams. You were alone on your team. Yeah, men del. Yes. Maybe do you have enough? So, and Tom needs one. Yes. Essential. Yes. there's a hole here. Yeah. Yep. Thank you very much. Yes. Og enda flere. Jul kommer tidlig. Okay. Again, thank you so much, and please enjoy the prototypes while we're still here and it's all set up. Thank you.
Takk til Filmskolen, takk til Tom og firmaet hans. Thank you for your company. Takk til alle ekspertene og takk til NFI, alle sammen. Uten dere ville vi aldri vært der. Tusen takk.